Maybe 5 or 10% of all the crypto projects out there are actually, there's something real behind it, not just promises.
It's not something that's going to change in a short while.
Who's going to shill the loudest?
Everyone was waiting for the alt season.
Alt season hasn't started yet. Everybody was waiting for it. Businesses around the world will integrate stablecoins into their existing business processes and payment flows.
You actually own your money, not some kind of bank who can decide to close your account.
They will have to adopt stablecoin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to HODL FM. This is the podcast where we discuss latest trends in the world of crypto. And today we're going to talk about institutions, about retail, about their role in the crypto world as of now, because we know that right now there's lots of institutional demand for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies. And today we're joined by Konstantin Vasilenko, who's the co-founder at Paybis, and he's going to let us into how institutions are interested in buying crypto, what processes are happening right now, how companies are adopting crypto as of now, and whether retail interest is still there. Hello, Konstantin, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you for having me here on this call. I'm always excited to tell more about the crypto market, the insights, what's happening, because I'm a crypto enthusiast myself from 2014. Like seen it all, been it all, done it all. So I'm always also kind of on the edge trying to understand what are the latest trends, where is it all going, what's happening with adoption, and so on.
Yeah, that's really cool. And to begin with, maybe you could say a few words about Paybis, what you guys are doing, and how long has the company been around? So you've been around for quite a while, and how old is the company?
Paybis is around for more than 11 years now. Basically, when I started, when I learned about Bitcoin, it was the time when me and my friend, our CEO, we started a company. And back in the days, the goal was to make it easy and simple to buy crypto, right? Because in 2014, when if you want to buy your first Bitcoin, for example, it was not as easy as it is right now. There were a few places, some forums, some P2P marketplaces, like Local Bitcoins was back in the days a popular place to get your first crypto. And we understood in the beginning that we want to, make it easy. Of course, it's business, it's about the revenue. And we saw an opportunity. So later on, along the road, we started not only helping retail people, or as we call them, Web2 customers, to get into crypto. We started also helping businesses to get into crypto. So we launched our on-ramp product, and we're on the market now, one of the leaders in the on-ramping world. So, for example, in Trust Wallet, you can buy crypto using Paybis as a provider. In Phantom Wallet, you can buy crypto like Bitcoin, for example, or Solana. Through our company as a payment provider, we have a lot of payment methods and so on. So this is a retail part of the story. So we are basically helping crypto projects, centralized exchanges, wallets, DeFi projects to bring more Web2 people into the space and, of course, generate additional revenue with their existing traffic of, let's say, Web3 people, because, most of people want to get extra. And from the business perspective, we also started helping companies to get into stablecoins, because when you say institutional, I would say institutional is more like ETF funds, which are investing their customers' money into crypto, like we all know about Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF funds and so on. But we are actually helping businesses to integrate stablecoins into their payment infrastructure. This is kind of the main two, let's say, three lines of business that we have, right? So retail business ourselves. So we have a mobile wallet. You can download it on your iPhone, get your first Bitcoin like in 30 seconds. Then businesses, get an account. If you're a small, medium enterprise, business crypto wallets, start participating in the crypto economy. And then all other projects which want to kind of adopt or add on-ramping or off-ramping flow into their business. This is what we do as well.
Okay, that sounds nice. It's actually a lot of different stuff. So you're like, on one hand, you're something similar to the exchange, but not the exchange though. And on the other hand, you help businesses to adopt crypto processes so that basically people would be able to buy crypto and pay with crypto in their daily lives. And as far as I know, you guys are mostly focused right now on B2B sphere. So you're not interested in the B2C processes within the company, but you're mostly focused on B2B procedures. Why is it like this?
Not really, to be honest.
Okay.
Let me explain. So, as I said, we have two kind of big verticals, right, for our business. B2C, the retail part, and B2B, the business part. So B2C stays. I mean, we continue to develop our wallet. So we're more like a custodian crypto wallet for newcomers. So, for example, if you want to explain to your parents, okay, go and buy Bitcoin, you would not tell them go and use MetaMask, right, or Trust Wallet, because they have to remember the seed phrase and so on. You will not send them to Binance or Bybit because it's overly complicated with a lot of trading features. They don't need that. So if you want to recommend, let's say, to a friend, he wants just to get his first spend $100 or euros on Bitcoin or Solana, this is the typical customers for us. It's super simple, super secure. I mean, same level of security as a non-custodial wallet, but with the custodial sense on top. It doesn't go anywhere. We're still, constantly improving, building new features. We have our own card on the roadmap, so people can actually spend crypto and so on. But from when you say like we start focusing more on businesses, I would say revenue-wise, let's say trading volume-wise, when we started last year working with business customers and helping them to get into stablecoins and get out of stablecoins, of course, businesses have completely different scale, right? Average check per person is like about $300, right? When you want to buy as an individual your first Bitcoin. When businesses are transacting, right, then they're transacting in like hundreds of thousands. Let's say euros, and it's completely different numbers. Of course, the fees and marginality as a business for us is completely different, but in terms of trading volume, I think it's like 10 times the retail volume that we are doing right now goes through our let's say business B2B volume, and the growth rate, the interest from the business customers is much higher than interest from retail. Retail customers tend to slow down a bit in their purchases, but businesses, they are not investing. I mean, at least our customers that we help, they are not the customers who are buying Bitcoin as a long-term investment. These are the customers which transacting internationally, and they need to use stablecoins to replace bank transfers, right? Because for many reasons, and we can talk more about it. So this is our typical customers right now. I mean, we are building CryptoFed infrastructure to make sure that we can support multiple use cases, that businesses that want to integrate stablecoin infrastructure into their existing financial systems can use us as a partner, right? Because it's clear now that the question, like if crypto adoption will come or stablecoin adoption will come, is answered, and the next question is like when businesses around the world will integrate stablecoins into their existing business processes and payment flows.
And if we're talking about non-crypto businesses trying to adopt crypto and trying to use stablecoins within their procedures, which kind of businesses are these mostly? What are your clients?
Yeah, we have clients basically from fintech sector. These are typically payment institutions of various kinds. For example, let's start with the card acquirers. So those companies who provide card acquiring services, and they are direct partners with Visa, MasterCard. So for example, if you go to the, let's say, shop or online anywhere and you pay with a card, there should be somebody on the end charging your card, right? Taking money from your bank, transferring money to another bank. So the whole economy, worldwide economy, holds on these big companies. So what we do for them, we help them not to collect the money from the customers, but we help them to settle their merchants in stablecoins. Let's imagine there is a company who is using acquiring services, right? They are providing some online services to their customers, and they work globally, right? So what would happen is that, let's say, if you accept money in different, let's say, regions, typically what happens is that you have local acquiring in US, in Europe, maybe in Asia, in Latin America, and Africa, right? And then you need to have local banking to accept money from these acquirers. So what happens is that a lot of companies start to understand that they can get settled from these acquirers in stablecoins, let's say in USDC, which is like now MiCA compliant stablecoin, instead of getting paid in local currencies worldwide. and it is faster, it is cheaper. They don't need so much banking. They save money on banking costs. They save time on transacting because, stablecoins are just, flying over, over the blockchain. And you don't have any intermediary. It's like, one couple of seconds and you get your transfer. So this is kind of the main reason why companies are adopting. And then alongside you have PSPs, who are basically partners, and they work with acquirers and they just manage small merchants. Then we have electronic money institutions, so basically small business banks or neobanks who are serving also businesses. So those banks who provide businesses with bank accounts, they also understand that their customers want to get into stablecoin for the same reasons, right? So if you need to, let's say, pay salaries, of course you need euro on your account so you can pay salaries. But if you need to, let's say, pay your supplier in another country or another continent which has different currency, then it's much easier and faster to pay them in stablecoin instead of sending a SWIFT payment. Instead of 1 or 2 days, it will take less than a minute.
Yes, this makes a lot of sense, actually. And you mentioned MiCA, and you mentioned that you are mostly dealing with stablecoins within your procedures. I have a question for you regarding MiCA right now. So for many, for me personally, I think that MiCA is not really good because it restrains my possibilities of using crypto. I myself am a crypto enthusiast, and why I like crypto and why most of crypto people like crypto, especially those OGs like you, for example, who started back in 2014. This is because of it gives you some kind of freedom to deal with your money because you actually own your money. It's not some kind of bank who can decide to close your account. Yeah. So what do you think about MiCA, and has it actually helped the stablecoins procedures in terms of businesses using stablecoins?
Yeah, with all the regulation, it's always it's not so black and white, right? There is always two sides of the coin. Let's say you mentioned that banks can freeze your account, right? But there is a bank license and there is bank regulation, and all of us trust banks more or less, right? So it's been decades we're using the banks. Even if you're 100% crypto, you still would spend money using some kind of crypto debit card where there is a bank behind it. So we all trust banks because the regulation there has been in place for decades. And the main reason for that regulation is to ensure that people can trust the financial institutions they deal with, that they will not lose their money. Look what has been happening in China recently, right? Their banking system has been developing, and it has been a bit behind, let's say, European and the US. And they had issues with bank runs in the last decade, right? Because people lost trust in the banks. So many banks were opening, people were losing money because bank misused the funds of their customers. So the same happens now in crypto, right? The industry becomes more mature. The idea behind MiCA and regulation, and of course there are multiple kind of goals, but the positive side is that it ensures that the companies which are on the market, which are getting the license, which are providing services, become more trustworthy. For example, in Europe, if I correct, around 6,000 VASP registrations. So VASP was the registration required for a crypto company to operate in Europe during the last couple of years, and now everybody has to upgrade to MiCA, basically a CASP. And I think only 5% of those companies will get MiCA, maybe 10 maximum, right? It will eliminate, let's say, 90% of small enterprises which did not ensure that the processes within their company correspond to regulation. Because, for example, now we are going through MiCA application in Latvia, and the level of details the regulator is asking us, the level of kind of procedures in the company, the level of maturity of the company that is expected is very close to the banking institution. An example, they have requirements for business continuity, so they were even asking what you guys gonna do if your, let's say, management board or decision makers are not available, for whatever reason, force majeure, how your company will continue to operate, that your customers will not suffer, that they will not lose their money, they will get the service. So it requires a company to become much more mature and established and enterprise grade to ensure that the people who are, let's say, coming to Paybis in Europe understand that we are a licensed, crypto wallet and exchange. They can be sure that their money will not be lost because we are a custodian, right? And they can be sure that they will get the service. So regulation helps adoption. It helps adoption a lot. All these, let's say, good things that happened to crypto in the last couple of years, where institutional adoption came, it all due to regulation. As I mentioned, now the big financial institutions are not thinking like if we should adopt crypto. They're now thinking how can we do it and when can we do it? What is, in terms of our roadmap? Because they understand, okay, crypto is here to stay. The regulators start regulating it. So now it just becomes another regulated asset, or, as I call it, an analogy to, let's say, a technical layer for fiat, right? So instead of using SEPA banking network or SWIFT banking network, you can use multiple blockchains to transfer value, right? But it still has to be regulated. For example, why USDT is not MiCA compliant and USDC is? The reason is that, let's say, European regulators are asking, okay, can you please store reserves of funds in Europe for those customers who have issued those stablecoins in Europe, because they have no control where Tether, for example, is keeping the funds, what Tether is doing with these funds, because we know that they are investing in US bonds, they are investing in gold, but there is no transparency, right? Therefore, regulator is saying we don't trust USDT, or we cannot guarantee, let's say, USDT to be trustworthy because we have no understanding what these guys are doing with their money. Today, you maybe hold 10 million in USDT, but tomorrow maybe a company will go bust. And this is what European Union, let's say, and the regulations are trying to prevent people from losing money, right? Prevent this from happening. USDC in its turn were built as a compliance first stablecoin. That's why it's getting so much traction. So yes and no, right? The regulations, we don't like it because there is somebody, especially the taxmen, are there, and with all these regulations, people will have to start paying taxes sooner or later with their crypto spending and so on and so on. But that's how it goes, right? Uber and Airbnb was also innovation that wasn't regulated. When people start complaining and there were a wide adoption, regulations came in, even not in all countries yet. It's still coming in, for example, for Airbnb. But again, the reason is to be sure that the people who are consuming the service are protected, and they have their rights protected by somebody. So I think regulation is good for crypto in general.
So Tether, USDT is still, despite the regulation from EU right now, Tether is still one of the, I think it's the biggest stablecoin.
Yeah. So it's 50% dominance, yeah. You can check it on DeFi Llama easily. It's 50% dominance of USDT. But it was 75, a year or two ago. So
yeah, but still, even now, I live in Europe, for example. For me, USDC is starting to become more and more common. Before that, I never actually used it myself, and I just like.
In the end, it doesn't really matter, right? For us, USDT or USDC, as long as it works.
As long as it works, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, we have right now Clarity Act coming out, hopefully in summer, and it was very much. It was argued by many people that it is too strict and it's not. Nobody understands what to expect. What do you think? Will it actually be as strict as MiCA, and how will it influence crypto worldwide? Because what's happening in the US is usually giving the trend to whatever is happening in the whole world. What are your thoughts on the Clarity Act?
Well, yeah, it's a very good question. What's going to happen? Because, for example, when the first draft was published, we all saw the comments from Brian Armstrong that, guys, this is not going the right way. With MiCA, in the beginning, it was the same discussion. I think actually Europe is ahead of US now in terms of regulation because, Europe has MiCA, US doesn't have it yet. With Genius Act, yes, they kind of just, let's say, decomposed just stablecoin because it was more urgent regulation comparing to everything else. But in general, when I read about it first and I understand what is approximately the scope, I think it should be actually a beneficial thing because it would actually allow, first of all, it would allow more ETFs That's what I think right away, because, for example, now we have Bitcoin, they have submitted, like, I think ETF for Solana and a few other coins, but this would allow, let's say, more institutional money to get into other crypto, right? Because now one of the biggest problem is that a lot of institutions don't understand if this specific token, I mean, how they should treat it. Is it a utility? Is it security? I think the beauty of, let's say, regulation adoption in US is that they have created this expert group with top guys, crypto guys from US, like, let's say, Brian. I mean, I know that a lot of people don't like Coinbase, but I think they are kind of one of the pioneers in this space, and they are shaping the future as long as other exchanges worldwide. So I think it's very good that they have this expert group in the US, making sure that this regulation and this act will represent interest of crypto community. So I really hope that they will not be over pushed or overlooked, and they will their voice will matter, and this Clarity Act will actually help crypto adoption going forward.
Yeah, I hope so. And what do you think about, like you mentioned, institutional interest that appeared after the ETF was approved, and Bitcoin definitely started growing, but everyone was waiting for the alt season. And you said that most of the partners you work with are mostly interested in stablecoins for obvious reasons, because having settlements in stablecoins is something you can rely on, and it's not something that's going to change in a short while. What do you think about alt season, and what do you think personally about altcoins? Are they here to stay, or is it something which is not going to be so popular as it used to be?
Yes, they say alt season hasn't started yet. Everybody was waiting for it, but yeah, it's not like the previous cycles, like in 17 or 20, 21. There, if you look last year, Bitcoin outperformed all of the altcoins. Maybe there are like one or two which outperform, but let's say if you take 99% of altcoins, Bitcoin outperformed. It means that a lot of projects come up, they try to pump in the value. This is what I always say to when I pitch our on-ramp solution to DeFi projects, that Web3 projects are only targeting Web3 people right now. And it's the same community, right? All of them who wanted to get into alt, they already did in 17, in 20, in 22. So I think right now what is happening is that people don't have a lot of trust in a lot of projects, right? That's why we see constant decline. Plus a lot of projects are, because, you know, the tokenomics that we see right now in most of the projects is some tokenomics that have been created, like the first ideas were in 15, in 17, where you have to, let's say, release some tokens for the team, for investors in 3-5 years scale, right? So what's happening, a lot of projects are unlocking their, let's say, part of the funds, which it creates additional pressure on the market. And the current market, where it's main institutional adoption, is not ready for that. Most of the projects are just, you know, releasing more crypto on monthly basis to the market, and the people who are getting this crypto, what they do, they, of course, they sell it, right? I think for altcoin season is, I would say the analogy is the dot-com bubble, right, in 2000s, where a lot of initial internet companies went viral, and then, you know, everything went bust, and only the strongest remain. For example, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all companies survived the dot-com bubble, but only the companies survived which produced some added value, that were not just chilling there and doing nothing. And the only projects will remain which generate additional value for the, say, token holders, where there is a utility for that token. Because what we see, most of the tokens, their liquidity is tied to some base asset, either to Ethereum or to Solana, depending where the tokens are issued. If it's on some L2, there is most likely some kind of a pair linked to the liquidity pool. So if Ethereum will grow, ultimately it will take all altcoins which are, let's say, created on the Ethereum network with it. And of course, when people will start seeing that the market is recovering, right, they will always balance the risks, and then of course they will go and start picking some altcoins. Hopefully that the altcoin market season is starting, and of course some of them will grow. And again, it's marketing, it's network, like who is gonna shill the loudest, they maybe will kind of get the biggest revenues. And then I think also the projects which actually produce something tangible, that there is actually a business model behind it, they will also grow. But there are not many, as we know, right? Maybe 5 or 10% of all the crypto projects out there are actually, there is something real behind it, not just promises. So those, the problem is how to spot these projects, right? Because everybody is saying that we are the best.
And what about Paybis? Do you guys focus just on, when it comes to retail side of things, do you guys focus just on these major cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, or do you also look into altcoins?
For now, our main focus is on major, so major 100, let's say. But there is not so much demand in, let's say, we call it long tail, the other tokens from web to people, because our main customers, if you remember, are those who are just getting into crypto. People who get into crypto, they want to buy something they know. And let's say that's why we're not selling meme coins, we're not selling any other coins, because if you wanna get into those things, you will then learn about exchanges, centralized, decentralized, and then you will go there. So people will just migrate. So we're just like the gate to the Web3 world. People come through our gates, then they take their time to kind of understand what is the world, the Web3 world behind the gates, and then they choose where they go next.
That's really interesting. And the last one, to wrap it up, I was wondering if you guys have noticed over the last year or maybe two, any kind of additional interest from like those Web2 people joining Web3? Has there been any kind of boom lately?
I would say from the retail perspective, it is a constant interest month over month. This is what we see on our website, on our mobile wallet, that every month we have more or less constant number of new users coming in. Of course, we're doing marketing and SEO, and there is a natural growth, right? But there is no like sudden spike of people who have never been into crypto and they suddenly wanted to get into crypto. During last year, I think that was the only case where we saw such a spike in interest. But we see that spike in interest from the business side of things. Like suddenly, all the businesses which are involved in, let's say, in payments, financial institutions, they suddenly have a kind of urge and FOMO that we need to get into stablecoins because it's happening. Like we don't want to be late, especially the big guys, right? They don't want to become a Nokia, another Nokia or another Skype, because they didn't believe in that.
So having stable coins within your procedures, especially if you're kind of dealing with transactions, is a must right now, you think?
Yeah, I think I totally believe that every DeFi project out there will need to have a bridge to fiat in, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years, because otherwise they will not survive. They need to start attracting Web to people, and the same with financial institutions. Every bank in Europe, any payment institution in Europe, any like mobile app, they will have to adopt stablecoin. So I think in 5 years, if you open something like Revolut or some kind of online banking, you will just see euro, dollar, USDC. It will be the same. There will be no difference. It's just another way of digitalized currency. That's it.
Hopefully it will be so, and hopefully it will be so very soon. Thanks a lot, Konstantin. It was Konstantins Vasilenko with us. He's the co-founder at Paybis. Thank you for finding time to join us. And for those who don't know, go check out the Paybis website, their socials. We will attach them in the description. And don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends. Thank you and bye.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye, Tatiana.